Welcome to the Team 3242 weekly podcast, the PodCats Podcast, where we'll talk about all our ideas and designs week by week. Okay guys, so earlier this week we got the reveal for the new 2019 First Robotics Competition. What were your guys' thoughts?
I don't know, dude. My first thing was like, where's the autonomous, you know? I thought they left it out at first. I thought they just kind of forgot about it, but it turns out they have this new thing called Sandstorm, where you like can't see anything. That's pretty weird, honestly. They've never done anything like that before. They've been autonomous in every single game that I know of, which is like 4.
But now that we have that no autonomous, like, what do you think, as a programming standpoint, what we're going to do this year?
Well, we're focusing a lot more on helping our drivers out. We're going to put a bunch of fancy stuff in there to make the driving easier. On one hand, at first I was like, no, autonomous, that means they don't have to program autonomous. That's awesome. But then I was like, also, I don't really have that much to do now. So I thought of a bunch of new fancy stuff, like making things turn on LEDs and, I don't know, moving the robot.
So I don't know if this is top secret or not, but how's the humidity sensor going?
So that's kind of a side project right now, but it's definitely going to make it on the final product. Basically, we want to sense the humidity.
Sounds good to me. Well, when I first saw the game as a design standpoint, it definitely seemed like we needed to focus on that the end game a lot. So basically, since we're also building straight off that chassis, we need to definitely implement the climb mechanism we're going to get on that top pedestal, and maybe even adjustable mechanism that can have getting to the lower pedestals if we find ourselves in a position that an alliance member is better at climbing that pedestal or whatnot. But basically, after we get that chassis, after this week 1, we can build off of that with our intake and lift mechanism as well. I got a question. So, Gabe, what do you think about the vision in general with all of the lines, and what is your thoughts on trying to get our robot to sense, and basically what do you think, and what exactly is going to happen with those lines to make our robot do what it wants to do? Or are we going to have a driver doing something, then the robot will tell the driver if it's in the right spot, or is the robot just going to do it itself?
Yeah, all right. So for posterity, a main feature of the Sandstorm mode is that instead of having no contact at all, you can drive using a camera. Because instead of the normal one, the normal autonomous, where you can't touch the driver's station at all, you're just blocked from seeing the field. Now you can get around this by doing things like using a camera. As Nick was saying, we have to decide if we want to use an autonomous mode like traditionally has been used in the past, or if you want to just take a more reactive approach and go for camera-based driving. There are pros and cons to both approaches. The main one for the traditional approach is consistency. You know, if you have an autonomous mode, it's pretty much going to do the same thing every time. But if you have a driver, things might go wrong, the driver might do things a little differently each time, and you won't get as consistent results. You could have someone else bump into you and mess things up if you don't have a clear path of where you're going to go. So even though it might seem more clear-cut at first as to what you're going to do, a lot of people are just like immediately, hey, we'll do the camera-based one. That seems easier, and we'll be able to see and react and move. But there are actually advantages and disadvantages to both approaches. Now this year, they're doing a ton of vision. They've kind of been ramping up the vision every year for the last couple of years, and in addition to making a lot of tools for it to be easier for newer teams. This year is probably the most vision of any year in the past, just because pretty much every game object has some sort of vision tape on it, which is retroreflective tape, which allows you to shine a light at the tape and get a clear image back of where exactly the tape is.
So I remember last year we tried to set up a camera and we ended up running into problems with bandwidth. We could only pull like 15 FPS, very low quality cameras. But are we going to have that problem again this year, or have we found a workaround?
It depends on how it's implemented. The vision is probably going to be primarily done on the robot, which which means that bandwidth won't be an issue because we won't have to send it back to the driver station.
So you're thinking dual cameras, possibly vision processing camera, and also having an analog camera just for driver's vision?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
All right, and what do you think about possibly putting a filter over the camera so we have like possibly a given vision of the camera itself, so we can, the driver knows exactly, like there's a center line in the vision and there's like a circle possibly for the hatch?
Yeah, dude, that could work. We can have multiple cameras. We can have cameras on cameras. We can have a camera watching the camera to make sure the camera's in the right place. We can do whatever.
Sounds good.
Aren't we also working with Pixies?
Yeah. This year we got a Pixie Cam, which is a dedicated vision processing camera that actually comes with its own little processor on there that does a lot of the work for you, so you don't have to offload it to something like a Raspberry Pi for optimal performance. The main thing is going to help us with is making our vision a lot faster and more consistent, because it's really good at detecting these vision targets and making them into usable data that we can turn into something for our program, which can be directly changed into, say, moving the robot or providing an indicator for the driver.
Jordan, since you deal a lot with like the building pneumatic side of things, and you've been hearing, of course, a lot of the ideas being thrown around with like design choices, new programming techniques, and everything. Is there anything that really like struck you, like, oh man, like this is going to be something new we have to build, or like how exactly did you feel about all that?
Well, we've been throwing around ideas for the design of having our chassis actually be able to move up and down so we can get onto the top platform. So that's something new. We've never actually had our chassis have to move in that way. Shouldn't be that big of a struggle, but it's new. We're also looking at different lifting mechanisms. So last year we had our cord, which would actually lift it up on a pulley system. So we've considered doing that again, but last year we had some build problems with that, just tension on it. But it went well, so it's a proven mechanic. So we're going to see if we can do that again this year. And other than that, though, build pretty much just like last year's. You know, you've seen robots actually that people mess around, robots done in one day, and it's just their robot from last year being able to do the same things. So
yeah, definitely we have. I feel like as a team right now we're trying to optimize the best mechanism all in one unit, because we can pick between a scissor lift, a extrusion kit, a rack and pinion setup, anything to lift up our entire intake, so we can do our hatch and cargo at the same time. What do y'all think about? Do you think we should do separate mechanisms for both of those things, or possibly we'll do one mechanism for both, or like what exactly popped into your minds as a whole when you saw the game itself? Was it more of a strategy, or was it like you wanted the design process? Because I guess for me, it just I was like, we need to do the climb at the end, and then who cares about the rest of the game? That was all just instant thoughts from the ground up. It was just we need to do that chassis. What did y'all think?
So I definitely thought the focus of the end game, like looking at the point value itself, getting on level 3, 12 points, like that's equal to 6 hatches. That's insane to think of the game being swung so hard at the end of it. So that was definitely a focus when looking at it from like a build perspective. So moving from there, because cargo and hatches were kind of hand in hand, we figured cargo probably wasn't as important as getting a hatch, because if you can't get the hatch, then getting the cargo doesn't mean anything. So basically it went like our points priority would go the level 3, and then hatches, and then cargo. And looking at the rocket, we also realized that our lifting mechanism needed to be able to be adjusted very easily, since there's the 3 different heights that we had to hit. So,
what do you guys think how climbing is different this year? Anyone who has been around robotics for a while will know that pretty much every year that I've seen, which is admittedly only like 4 years.
Yeah, I think it started with Frisbee, because Frisbee had to climb Pyramid, and then from there they moved to the next year that was climbing was Stronghold, which is on the bar, and then the bar was represented again last year with Power Up.
So basically, the last 4 years at least have had some kind of climbing element, mostly in the end game, right? So what makes this year different?
Well, this year's is more akin to like the basketball game. I forget what it's called now, where you had to like just drive up onto the pad and do something.
The bounce beam.
Yeah, the bounce beam.
Yeah.
And so it's more akin to like driving onto it, but it's still like vastly different since we're driving up much higher.
Definitely extremely different though, because previous years it was more of a you could build your robot to be completely stable on that object because you had like a bar to grab onto.
Yeah, it was always attached to something. Lifting
This year, your robot's completely dependent on its lift mechanism on its own. So it's definitely a lot of physics and design process that we're going to have to go through. Probably a lot of variations of our prototype that we're assembling right now.
Yeah, this actually, we can lead this on to the drivetrain that we're choosing. I know we're still thinking about that, but pros and cons to, we've been looking at Mecanum versus Omni versus whatever. What do you think about that?
Well, there's always those options between Mecanum, pneumatic wheels, anything that like basically is used traditionally for drive wheels, and we basically always tried to go towards Mecanum because of the free reign of space you can have into the entire field if you use Mecanum. So we're probably going to try to do that this year again, but just maybe some implementation of a Omni wheel for stability of the robot. But I know I wanted to definitely see maybe a possibility in doing tank drive, because like we were joking about it, but maybe having a robot that just jumps onto the pedestal, just full on jumps onto the pedestal, but you never know. We'll find out through our prototyping phase.
You know, one initial idea that I had was just really big wheels, but I was told by some of my compatriots in the build department that that's not viable. So
19-inch wheels, not viable.
Yeah. Monster truck wheels just like crawl right onto there. The other thing that, as a design standpoint, even though we have all of these options for wheels, we definitely want to try to keep the center of gravity as low as possible, because that'll eliminate any possible problematic issues at the end when we're climbing, because we want to keep that center of gravity just in the middle of the robot, so there's no possible tilting over of the robot at all.
Yeah, I feel like that's definitely going to happen a bunch. You're going to see those nail-biting games, and then the robot goes to get on and then just flips over.
It sounds like this whole climbing situation is a bit different without the ability to support yourself with ease.
Completely different.
Yeah, so was that the most like surprising part of the whole thing? Like,
probably, because every year it's always been, the hatch is something different, but every year it's always been a ball, a box, something to pick up with an intake mechanism. There's basically universal mechanisms by now that you can even buy on AndyMark, that you could just get an intake mechanism that has bearing holes. You just put the axle in whatever type of wheel you want to use, because it's so universal by now that you're just trying to do, pick up an object with rolling wheels.
Yeah, so other than that though, it's basically just like Stronghold in the sense that you just shoot the ball in.
Yeah, it's kind of
hatch is a little different with that.
Yeah, it seems like a mix of like all the past years that it's okay. We got Stronghold, we got what else we got in here? We got Power Up, basically because we're lifting stuff up pretty high. Steamworks.
Yeah.
Steamworks is kind of like universal to grabbing those hatches. We got those gears. The gears were just like it, but they're a lot thinner. But the Velcro is gonna be a lot different from just picking up those gears, because a lot of teams I saw with in Steamworks, they'd just run up and then it would just latch onto the gear and pick them up, and then. But now there's no way to like get underneath that. There's no way to get underneath that hatch very easily. So you're gonna want to do something to just smack onto those hatches with the Velcro, possibly.
Yeah, can we talk about the viability of Velcro? Because the first time I watched the game, I was thinking, what's gonna happen is everybody's just gonna use Velcro, and then like the Velcro is just gonna wear out, and then most robots are gonna just stop working. So.
But like the Velcro can't wear out, because they would have to. Technically, the way we would have to replace it on our robot, they would have to end up replacing it on the game pieces, because I feel like that Velcro is definitely going to be pretty heavy duty Velcro if they're planning on using heavy use with match play, of using possibly even 60 matches a competition to like 60 matches plus actually, and those all have to be consistently with the Velcro.
Yeah. Yeah, luckily, after reading some of the rules more, I read that they were checking the Velcro after, or the beginning of every match. So that shouldn't really be that big of a problem, but that was the first thing that jumped out at me.
Yeah, I wonder how they're gonna check that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, guys, I got an idea. Just came to me. Bear with me for a second. Velcro wheels.
Oh.
Because then you run over the hatches and you just pull it up into the.
Lift it up.
And it gets nice and jammed in there, and
Snap it in half.
Is there any rules on climbing the rocket?
Exactly. That's exactly what I was
Oh,
thinking.
we just drive up
You
onto
don't
the
need
rocket.
a lifting mechanism if you can drive right up on the rocket. Now think about this combination of my two earlier ideas. Really big Velcro wheels.
Yeah.
oh, what about really big Velcro wheels that push you up? Like it has like the pneumatic system that brings you up.
Really big Velcro wheels that also bounce.
Yeah.
Think about this. Think about this. Is there any rules against taking a game piece and using it in your favor of climbing a habitat? Because say you grab the ball and you
Is
bounce
there?
yourself onto
Oh.
the pedestal.
Oh,
Good
yes,
idea, though. Good idea.
There is, yes. Game
Yeah.
pieces
Gotta
can't be
check.
used for their for
Yeah.
unintended purposes.
Yeah, we're gonna have to check the manual on that one.
Yeah, we might turn a blind eye to that.
And that was mostly so that people don't throw things at the
See, I'm
referees.
saying 4 pistons, we just go over, shoot them down, we just jump on the pedestal.
Oh yeah, like hydraulics in the
Yeah.
car. That was
Yeah.
the main thought that I thought originally. It was just like, just
Yeah, just
drive right onto there.
You know how cool that would be?
Oh, it'd be sick.
That would
And
be
it'd be the
insane.
sounds, pneumatic sounds. You know how that.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Ooh.
Always been a fan.
Riley, I know you've been working on the 3D electrical schematic. What are you thinking so far of that?
It's a pretty interesting idea. Just being able to have all of like the different motor controls and all the other electrical components, just being able to have them in a box that can easily just be like pulled out and removed, and like fix anything that's going on, especially when all the other build people are working on the robot.
Yeah,
And I think it's gonna make things really fast
Yep.
and like streamlined.
yeah, because you just unbolt that whole box and you take it off and you can put it on your side pit, and then you can take off the protective cover and maintenance for all that stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's an idea that definitely can be utilized like
Every year.
yeah, just like all the time.
And you can even use it as a just test module. If you have the Robo-Rio programmed to Simple Motions, you have a controller plugged into the PC right on top of it. You got all of those motor controllers can be used for any robot.
You want to talk about what goes into actually designing it? Because I know you guys are using SolidWorks to draw.
Yeah, basically just using SolidWorks, using all the available parts that we have and everything that we
Step
are,
files.
all the step files that we're able to get, and just putting them together in assembly, seeing how things work. We've been moving stuff around. A couple different designs have come out of it. Different layers, and like, do we want these going here? Like, do we want these motor controls? Like, do we want like sparks there, and talons in this portion? SolidWorks has been phenomenal for that. It's once you really get to know it, it really allows for a lot of freedom.
See, something new we're doing with Build as well is because we've been drafting it all up in SolidWorks, we can actually just go ahead and print out pictures of what we're trying to make, and then you can literally place it on to whatever you're gonna like. If you're gonna drill a hole through a piece of metal or something, you literally just place it on there, line it up, punch through the paper, and then everything's so much more precise than trying to take out the tape measure or even the calipers by that means.
Yeah, I know SolidWorks is definitely going to be a very helpful tool that we're going to use this year with making sure quality control and just overall design, because it's easy editing of parts. And we even have the functionality of having iPads that have our design on them. So we're using SolidWorks, which allows us to do all those things streamlined, and it allows the team all to be on the same page at all times with the mechanical drawings and just the overall assembly itself.
Yeah, that's been really helpful for the build team, especially because we have a lot of like new members trying to get into the program. That this helps them so much by being able to. Everybody understands what the robot is and how it works by just looking at this free drawing that we've made.
Yeah, you can just hand it to somebody, and you can just be like, "Hey, here's what we're working on. Here's how it all fits together," and it's been really useful.
Yeah, we have a drive set up so all the files are on a drive. Any student can download them, look at them, like manipulate it on their computer, see what they would do differently, and then that helps out design as well.
So there's one more climbing possibility I think needs consideration before we move on.
Yeah.
So, according to my sources, there is a sort of terminal velocity that one can reach, where if you hit the lower platform, which is at a 45-degree angle at the front, at sufficient speed, I believe it's about 65 miles per hour, you will be launched immediately onto the top platform. Now, do you guys think that's viable?
It sounds like a very possible thing, but I don't know about like accuracy or
Safety.
and
Yeah.
maybe it might be a little reckless.
Now,
And
here's just a thought.
I fear
What
for
about
the
some
longevity of our robot.
Some sort of air braking system, like we could deploy
Ooh,
parachutes.
parachutes. Now you're talking.
See, we needed to have very small wheels though, like, in order to get that angle
It's true,
right.
the smaller the wheels, the faster it
The
is.
faster you go to.
But you love big wheels,
Yeah,
man.
Big wheels.
That's gonna be a problem.
Big
That's gonna be a
Velcro
problem.
wheels.
Now, what if we had a big wheels made out of very many small wheels?
Ooh.
Like Meccano.
Yeah.
Now you're thinking.
Yeah.
You want to be able to strafe at 65 miles per hour?
I mean, that's just one man's dream.
Okay.
Okay.
So for this year, we're also moving over. Finally, we're a little behind. Moving over to electronic scouting. So we're gonna have our 6 stat pads up in the stands recording data. And what we plan on doing differently as well is we're gonna have a printer just locally, so that we can just wirelessly print them out and hand it to our drive team, so that they can see what our alliances are good at. And what
Or we
we're
can even
good at.
hand it to our current alliance too.
Yeah, we can hand it to them. We can really optimize our strategy from that point by being able to see what we can do the best and then going fully for that and seeing what they can do best and then working with that.
Yeah.
So,
Definitely the communication between the alliances is probably going to be important too, because that sandstorm, you don't want to have 2 robots that are going to be autonomous and then another, like say a rookie team robot that they only have their camera, and then our autonomouses can possibly get messed up by the rookie team getting in the way.
yeah.
So definitely a lot of communication on that, as well as just between the alliances, like definitely just really getting each other's away.
Yeah.
Because the sandstorm, we're all blind. And if we're, especially, you want to make sure that we are doing an autonomous, if we are doing autonomous, maybe even having it possible, like, stop the autonomous, we can get out of the way
Just
of
like a kill
anyone else, like a nice kill switch to get us back into teleop, because we don't want to get in other people's ways, and we don't want other people to get in our way and damage any parts on either robot.
Yeah. Also, we're only allowed 1 robot on the other side of the field at any time. So we have to really communicate that if
Yeah.
that's what we're going to do
Lots
defensively.
of yelling at
Yeah.
each other.
So, yeah, because if we're on one side and then another robot just happens, on our team, just happens to cross over for whatever reason, that's a big penalty. That's just a constant. It'll rack up. So we have to be very careful with that.
You do not want to lose on a penalty.
No.
Now, I can segue into a little bit of a discussion on defense.
What do you guys think defense is going to be like this year? Now, defense is kind of a weird topic every year because, you know, it's kind of boring and nobody wants to do it. But every year, inevitably, it's actually important.
Yeah, it seems like defense is always something, like you were saying, like nobody wants to do it, but it's always super good and a pretty easy task to accomplish.
Yeah, I have seen like from like certain people who are like really fond of defense, like they're really feeling like for this game mode, they're like kind of limiting on the teams on it, like 1 robot on that side, and like no ifs, ands, or buts. Like that is the rule. So it'll be really interesting. Like if 2 members focus too strongly on defense, there is like no way to really work around that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of making defense a little bit more risky than it is.
At the same time, it can make defense a little more powerful, because while there is that restriction, there are almost no other restrictions, at least compared to previous years, where, for instance, last year you had a lot of areas, for instance, the exchange zone, where you couldn't really play defense because it would be an automatic penalty, because that's just such an important area. There's no such zones in this year's game, so you can play defense anywhere as long as it's only 1 robot. And to add on to that,
Actually, no, because you can't legally be in the habitat.
Oh yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you can't be in the habitat. That means you can't play defense in the end game, which is a little bit of a limitation, but nothing we haven't seen in previous years.
That's usually
That's,
how
that's
it's
pretty
set up.
common.
Yeah.
Everyone's basically trying to do their.
Everyone just push everyone over,
Yeah.
right? Like, ooh, I accidentally ran into you.
That's not gracious nor professional.
No.
Yeah.
we care about gracious professionalism
Yes, we
here.
do.
But overall, pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I think everyone's pretty interested. You know, a lot of new designs, a lot of new techniques to use and everything, and excited about what we'll get done for next week, huh?
All right. We'll see you next week.